So, all right. So let's do our review here. So 5 kings that Isaiah served under: Uzziah, also known as Azariah. Jeff's not here yet. That's interesting.
I didn't even notice that. No, it's not really like the first one.
Yeah, I know. Eli, where's Allie?
She's sick.
Oh no. Okay. All right. Well, let's send Allie a encouraging message later. All right. So other kings that Isaiah served under: Jotham. Okay. Another one. Ahaz. Who else? Hezekiah. Good. And one more. Manasseh. Good job. All right. Uzziah. Good king.
Yeah.
Good bad.
Good bad. There you go. Good bad. Jotham was meh. Meh. Didn't do terrible, but he didn't really do anything great either. Ahaz was bad. Yeah. Bad. Just all around bad. Hezekiah was.
Mediocre.
I think we could say that Hezekiah was mostly good. You could. I mean, after all, it does talk about Hezekiah being one of the great kings of Judah. He makes mistakes along the way, but even David makes mistakes along his time as king too. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it mentions him like that. Huh? Bad, good. Yes. There you go. Good job, guys. Yeah. And Manasseh is good after he gets returned from exile. He gets taken prisoner and then eventually gets returned to Judah, Jerusalem, and he realizes that he was very sorely mistaken during his time as king, and so he works to try and fix things when he gets back. So yeah. So Isaiah begins his whole prophecy by talking about how the people were supposed to be this example of righteous living to the world. That when it comes to the poor and the helpless, the world just kind of treats those people by just saying, "Well, tough luck," or just abusing them more. And God's people are supposed to do what? Help them. Yeah, we're supposed to care for them. We're supposed to recognize the fact that we too were once helpless, and so God specifically calls on us to do that. And so Israel is supposed to be this light to the world of what holy living is supposed to look like, but they're terrible. I mean, they just do an awful job. I mean, David does a decent job while he's king. Solomon starts off kind of nice, and then it just crashes. They have a few spots of light here and there, but it's all over bad. Um, but Isaiah still holds out that hope for the future rescuer, hinting towards Christ's arrival. God shows that He gives His people every chance for success, but they haven't been righteous. What does God provide Israel to succeed? Land? Yep. Malls and wine press. All right. The land was representative of what? Land. And I'm sure that there's other stuff there too, but I mean, in a way, the land really was. I mean, the vineyard, the good soil of the vineyard itself was really the land that they got. I mean, they were given a very fertile land. They squandered it. The watchtower walls, what's that supposed to? Protection. There you go. All right. And the wine press is harvest. Yeah. What did you say, Kobe?
Harvest.
All right. Harvest of what? Harvest of all the things. Harvest of what?
Souls.
Kind of. There you go. Righteousness. There you go. And to speak to what Eli's kind of getting at there, I mean, if we are doing a harvest of righteousness, if we're living righteous lives, we should see other souls come to Christ because of that, come to God because of that. So Ahaz is under attack by which kings?
Ahaz
Yes.
and
No, sorry. Ahaz is under attack by which two nations? Israel?
Azariah.
Aram,
There you go.
Aram.
That was my second guess.
I think Eli's just accustomed at this point to saying like weird names, and so he just starts shouting them off now. Okay, so Ahaz is under attack from Israel and Aram, and why are they attacking him? Huh? Well, yeah, he's definitely bad. That's not necessarily why they're attacking him in this particular time, though. So who is trying to come after Israel and Aram? Who's the big world power at this point? Assyria, right? And Israel and Aram came to Ahaz and said, hey, join up in this alliance with us. And Ahaz said what? No. So they say, okay, well, if you're not going to join us, we don't want you to potentially become somebody that could attack us. So they start attacking Judah. And so he seeks help from who? Assyria. There you go. Yeah. Seeks help from Assyria. Instead of calling on God when they arrive, he's sitting here calling on false gods. He eventually offers Assyria money to pay them for help to get rid of Israel and Aram. And God says, oh, that's not the right move whatsoever. God even offered to give him a sign that he was going to help, and Ahaz refused it. And so God said, oh, we'll fix this real quick. Okay, so how does God view Assyria? God views Assyria as a what?
Tool.
Tool, good. To do what?
Bestow pain.
Bestow pain. That's actually the correct answer. I'm just going to put it in one word instead of two. To discipline. Bestow pain. I like that. Bestow pain. It's like a very formal, proper way of saying it.
It's like one word.
All right. So God views Assyria as a tool to discipline the what?
Wrongful.
Kind of.
Israelites.
It's not just the Israelites. It's who?
Everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. The world. Okay? God has said, okay, all y'all's time is up. I've given all of you time to get your acts together, to see the way things should be. You're not doing it. You're still treating everybody in your countries horribly. So I'm going to sweep through and destroy you all. Okay? And then, so God punishes, but it grieves him, and he wants everybody to be with him. This is one of the constant messages that we see throughout Isaiah, is that God punishes, but he's always like lamenting the fact that he has to punish. And then the last thing here, the importance of the response. So, what's the response? I didn't have it underlined. What's the response of Uzziah when he gets confronted for his sins?
No, bad.
Bad what?
Rebels.
No bad.
Rebels, yes. Yeah, he says, no, you can't tell me what to do. And God says, watch me. He strikes him with leprosy. Okay? Hezekiah messes up. And what's Hezekiah's response? Yeah, he obeys. Now, we saw last week that what happens is that he pays off the king of Assyria. We don't actually have a record of Hezekiah going off and actually repenting, of actually saying I messed up. But based on his actions, I think it pretty well shows that Hezekiah must have had some kind of heart to heart with God, where he realized, I messed up, I need to fix this, and he moves on. And so he obeys. And this is one of the biggest things here is, we see this with David too. When God's people are confronted with their sins, no matter what it is, how are we going to respond to it? Because if we're going to hear God's Spirit convict us of our sin and say, no, that's not the way that you need to be acting anymore, and we ignore it, that's not good. If we sit there and choose to rebel and say, whatever, I'm going to keep doing this, that's not good. The response that God's people needs to have is obedience. And obedience confesses and recognizes what the sin is and chooses to stop doing that, to start working towards not being like that anymore. All right, so let's go ahead and get into chapters 24 through 25. We started over here last week, so we're going to start over here this week. Abby, you want to start us off? We're gonna actually read through both chapters, 24 and 25. Let's see here. We've got 3, 5, 7, 9, 12. Let's do 3 verses each this morning. And then before we get started reading, I want to say this. As you're reading or as you're hearing other people read through the chapter, specifically chapter 24, I want you guys to be trying to pay attention. And how does chapter 24 sound like other texts in the Bible? I want you to be thinking about what texts are coming to mind as you're reading through chapter 24. So Abby, go ahead and start us off. 3 verses each, everybody.
See, the Lord is going to lay waste the earth. See, the Lord is going to lay waste the earth and devastate it. He will ruin its face and scatter its inhabitants. It will be the same for priest as for people, for the master as for his servant, for the mistress as for her servant, for the seller as for the buyer, for the borrower as for the lender, for the debtor as for the creditor. The earth will be completely laid waste and totally plundered. The Lord has spoken this word.
The earth dries up and withers, the Lord languishes and withers. The heavens languish with the earth is filled by people. They have disobeyed the law, violated the statutes, and broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse consumes the earth, its people must bear the guilt. Therefore earth's inhabitants are burned up, and very few are left.
The new wine dries up and the vine withers, although merrymakers drown.
Huh? No, you. Huh?
The verse 8.
I've got the joyful timbrels. Did you say something else? Let's just go with joyful timbrels. Okay.
I'm lost right there.
Okay. Let me see.
The joyful timbrels are still the noise of the village has stopped. Joyful harp is on. No longer do they drink wine with the sun. The beer is bitter to its drinkers.
Yeah, so Hudson, you
The
got.
city lies disposal. The entrance of every house is buried. The streets, they cry out for wine. All the joy turns to gloom. The joyful sounds are banished from the earth. The city is left ruins. Its gates are buried to pieces.
So will it be on the earth and among the nations, as when olive trees begin to rise and gleanings are left after the great harvest. They raise their voices, they shout for joy, for from the west they acclaim the Lord's majesty. Therefore in this will glory, give glory to the Lord, exalt the name of the Lord, the God of Israel in the islands.
From the ends of the earth we hear songs of praise, of glory to the righteous one. But I say, O waste away, I waste away, woe is me, for the traitors have betrayed, with betrayal the traitors have betrayed. Terror and the pit and the snare are upon you, O inhabitant of the earth. He who flees at the sound of the terror shall fall into the pit, and he who climbs out of the pit shall be caught in the snare, for the windows of heaven are open, and the foundations of the earth tremble.
The earth is broken up, the earth is split.
Mm-hmm.
The earth is violently shaken. The earth rails like a drunkard and it sways like a hut in the wind. So heavy upon it is the guilt of its rebellion that it falls never to rise again. In that day the Lord will punish the powers in the heavens above and the kings on the earth below.
They will be herded together like prisoners bound in a dungeon. They will be shut up in prison and be punished. After many days the moon will be dismayed and the sun ashamed. For the Lord Almighty will reign on Mount Zion in Jerusalem and before its elders with great glory. Lord, are you my God? I will exalt you and praise your name. For in perfect faithfulness you have done wonderful things, things planned long ago.
You have made the city a heap of rubble, the fortified town a ruin, the foreigner's stronghold a city no more. It will be rebuilt. Therefore strong peoples will honor you. Cities of ruthless nations will revere you. You have been a refuge for the poor, a refuge for the needy in their distress, a shelter from the storm and a shade from the heat. For the breath of this ruthless is like a storm driving against a wall.
And like the heat of the desert, you silence the uproar of foreigners. As heat is reduced by the shadow of a cloud, so the song of the ruthless is stilled. On this mountain the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats and the finest of wines. On this mountain he will destroy the shroud that enfolds all peoples, the sheet that covers all nations.
He will swallow up death forever, and surveying Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. He will remove his people's disgrace from all the earth. The Lord has spoken. In that day they will say, surely this is our God. We trusted him, and he saved us. This is the Lord, we trusted in him. Let us rejoice and be glad for his salvation. The hand of the Lord will rest on this mountain, but Moab will be trampled in their land as the straw is trampled down in the manure.
They will stretch out their hand in it, as swimmers stretch out their hands to swim. God will bring down their pride, despite the cleverness of their hands. He will bring down their high fortified walls and lay them low. He will bring them down to the ground, to the very dust.
Were you guys catching what was being said there in verse 11? Just right then. Okay, I thought maybe that's what you were noticing. Yeah. I don't know how I missed it, but if you actually pay attention to what's going on there, and so God's saying that as straw is trampled down in the manure, and then He says they will stretch out their hands in it as swimmers stretch out their hands to swim. He's not just talking about they're going to stretch their hands out in the air. He's talking about they're going to be like so deep in the manure that they're going to be stretching out their hands in it and like swimming in it. I didn't catch that visual until just a moment ago. I was like, that's gross. Okay, on that note, is there any other things that you guys happen to catch this through reading through chapters 24 or 25 that you thought was interesting or had questions about?
I did not see the similarities to any of the texts in the Bible.
Okay. Anybody else catch any kind of similarity? All right. So if you actually go back to chapter 24 and you kind of start looking through verses 1 through 13, the more you read it, I think the more you'll start to notice how Isaiah is kind of drawing from the chaos and the devastation that occurs in the flood. Okay? That just as God in the beginning with the flood wiped out the earth and judged it, He's doing the same. He's talking about He's doing the same thing here. Okay, and then verses 16b to the end of the chapter, it kind of gets back to this idea of judgment and such. The floodgates of the heavens are open, the foundations of the earth shake, the earth is broken up, etc., etc. Towards the end, where did it go? At one point he talks, at the very end in verse 23, he says, "For the Lord Almighty will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before its elders with great glory." Do you guys recall another scene in the Bible where God is sitting in heaven on His throne with the elders sitting around Him?
Revelation.
There you go. Okay? So it's kind of interesting because Isaiah draws from the flood narrative to begin it, and then he kind of takes it to the next level. And then John, when he writes Revelation, is going to come back and look at Isaiah and say, ooh, yeah, I'm going to pull from that and bring it into my text, into my letter. So yeah, there's a really interesting way that it all comes together. So the NIV Study Bible actually talks about how chapters 24 through 27, the ones that we're going to be focusing on this week, are kind of like a close to chapters 13 through 23. We talked last week or the week before about how starting in chapter 13, God's issuing like this judgment on the nations around the earth. And so he starts going from one country to the next, just saying, you're going to die and you're going to die. And so this kind of wraps it all up and just kind of says, okay, generally speaking, everybody's going to die. And that there's still going to be joy and hope for those who trust in God. To start off, we're going to talk about the fulfillment of the covenant. All right. So let's get into that a little bit more as a reminder. So what are the three parts to the covenant? Land. Yep. Oh, sorry. That's the three parts of the promise right there. Hang on. No. That's actually what I was actually referring to. So you were giving me the answers. I just wrote it down on the wrong spot here. Okay. So yes, land, descendants, and blessing.
And the covenant isn't one of the signature.
Yes.
Oh, and then my
Signature.
Yep.
Circumcision.
Yeah, that's Abraham's signature.
Thanks, man.
Okay. We can hold off on the covenant part for just a little bit. We're going to come back to that. That's kind of convenient because that'll let the whiteboard here dry so I can actually write up there. Okay, so the promise was land, descendants, and blessing. Okay? So going through chapter 24, God is like consistently saying, I'm going to destroy the land. The land is going to be destroyed. And I mean, like he just consistently says this. So now if you're an Israelite, and part of the promise that you have clung to your entire life is that the land is part of the covenant relationship that you have with God. And now God is saying, I'm going to destroy the land. How does that make you feel? Not good. You're going to start feeling kind of nervous. All right? And God is basically saying, look, I told you. Here was the deal. If you followed me, this would be the blessing, that this would be the promise that you would get as long as you obeyed. Did they obey? No. So he is saying the land is going away. I'm going to take it away. All right? But this is kind of what's really interesting about what happens here, because God, even before the people entered the promised land, God tells Moses to do a very specific thing, and he breaks the people up into two camps, and he sends one camp up one mountain, and he sends the other camp up another mountain. And he tells Moses, he says, okay, now I want you to have the people repeat this. If you do what I tell you to do, this mountain you tell about all the blessings that are going to occur. So this group of people starts shouting all the blessings that are going to occur on Israel if they follow God's commands. And then Moses says, okay, if you don't do what God says, you people tell them what's going to happen, what kind of curses are coming. It kind of sounds like a game show. Almost like, tell them what's behind door number 1 and door number 2. But the people on the other mountain actually start shouting out all the different curses that are going to come upon the land. And they're telling about, the land's going to be destroyed, all this different kind of stuff. And so God is fully justified in what he's doing. Okay? And so God punishes them and fulfills the curses that he says he would bring upon them if they don't obey. Okay? So now let's get to that covenant part. So we've got the signature. We talked about that. What are the other two parts to the covenant?
The covenantees, whatever you want to say. My mind's not working. The people in the covenant.
That's an interesting way of putting it. The covenantees. The parties involved.
Thank you.
All right.
Much better word than what I can help with.
Involved. Wow. Okay, whatever. The parties involved. What else? Huh? It's kind of related to this part right here.
Promise.
How did they get their promise?
Obedience.
Okay. So the responsibilities.
Close enough.
First try. All right. So the covenant was the parties involved, the responsibilities, and the signature. Abraham / Israel's sign of the signature was circumcision. God's sign of the signature was what?
The outcome. No.
No.
The pot going to the
There you go. Yes. The floating fiery pot.
Oh, true.
All right. And the pot's going through, like Abraham has to take the animals and he cuts them in half and he sets them aside, of each other, and then the pot passes in between the two pieces of the animals. And what's that supposed to signify?
Let my fate be like these animals if I do not do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Let my fate be the same as the animals if I don't do my end of the bargain here. Okay? And so, God obviously fulfills his part of the covenant. Okay? And God is going to punish everybody who resists him. This is precisely why the land gets wrecked the way that it does. But notice what else happens when God punishes. He exiles a large group of people, right? Okay? And so you have certain people who are faithful who are rescued from this punishment. You've got Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Mordecai, Esther, several others that get rescued out of this disaster. Okay? And so even though the curses has been fulfilled, there's still a big problem in the lives of the people that are left. And what is it? Sin. The curses have been fulfilled, but there's still an issue of sin. There's still this problem that the people, even those that are left, are still left with the problem of sin. Okay? And so when we're in the garden, when we're looking at the garden sequence, Adam and Eve mess up. They try to cover up their sin with fig leaves. God covers their sin with what? Okay? And so it establishes this precedent that in order for sin to be covered up, something has to what? Die. Something's got to die. And this is why the idea of sin and death is always connected. Because in order for sin to be covered up, there has to be a death. Okay? And this is the amazing part about what God does. God fulfills the covenant. Something dies through his own Son. And because God's Son dies, he takes it upon himself to free us from the power of sin and death. All right? And so this is the amazing thing of what he does. I mean, this is why that when we're baptized, we're not just being baptized, we're joining in Jesus' sin. We're taking on his death as our own so that we can also defeat death. And we're brought into new life. Okay? And that's it's the whole reason that we have hope beyond the grave. So let's look at the one responsible for destruction. If you're in this ancient world, you're seeing Assyria wreck every single country that it comes across. Who do you think is responsible for all this destruction? Assyria. If you look through chapter 24, who does Isaiah seem to think is responsible for all this destruction? God. Okay? Because God is using Assyria as what?
A tool.
A tool. All right? And so Isaiah is specifically saying the world can sit there and think all at once that it's Assyria that's doing this, but it is really God that's behind all of this. And that message doesn't just ring for Assyria. It's going to eventually ring true for Babylon, for the Persian Empire that follows. It's going to ring for Alexander, Rome, or any other future country that comes about. And so this is the thing that we have to understand, is that Isaiah specifically is trying to say God is the one responsible for this, not Assyria. Okay, so pattern for history. So we said that verses 1 through 13, Isaiah is pulling from what narrative?
First person.
Nope. Flood. There you go. All right. He's pulling from the flood narrative. What happens in verses 14 through 16? What?
Promise.
Nope.
Or
I don't know.
Brad.
What? Not pray. What? Praise. Okay, yes. Sorry. Yeah. So there's this random interjection of praise in the middle of chapter 24, and then we've got more what? Yeah, death, judgment, whatever. Okay? So now here's the interesting thing, and I don't know if Isaiah was intentionally trying to do this, or if God actually was thinking of this more and had Isaiah write it in this way. But you've got beginning, or pre-Jesus. You got Jesus, and then you got post-Jesus. You've got death. Then you've got Jesus, and so there's this moment of praise, and then there's still the world post-Jesus, because we're still groaning for the future that is to come. Okay? I thought that was a really interesting thing that to consider when we're looking at chapter 24. Chapter 25, it talks about this feast. Let me ask you guys a question. Raise your hand if you've ever been invited to dinner by LeBron James. Steph Curry. Anybody gone to dinner with Steph Curry? Russell Westbrook?
gross.
Garth Brooks?
Double gross.
Brooks. It's not a basketball.
Luke Bryan? Who says it has to be a basketball player? Queen of England? Anybody gone to dinner with the Queen of England? No? Why? Why have none of you guys been to dinner with any of these big important people?
They don't
Turned
like
it all
us.
down.
Huh? Turned it all down. There you go, Eli.
Peasants. We don't
Right.
eat dinner.
All right. Typically speaking, people that are in high rank don't just all of a sudden start saying to people of low rank and saying, come to dinner with me, right? They're usually spending dinner with people that are the same rank. So God is actually, obviously high above everything, but he's specifically saying, I want you to sit at the table with me. He's not just sitting here saying, okay, so great, that's great that you all are in heaven now. I'm going to go ahead and go over here and spend time with my angels and those really special people of the Bible. He's saying everybody is going to sit at the table with me together. All right? And then one other thing that I noticed from this week's study was this powerful sign that God gives. Okay? So one of the commentaries that I was reading of, the guy points out that in ancient Near Eastern cultures, it was pretty typical in the mythologies for the stories to have this time where like the gods would throw a dinner party, and the main god would like show this feat of strength or something like that. And so like in one of these stories for the Babylonian high god Marduk, he makes something disappear and then reappear. Yay. Okay, and so Isaiah kind of pulls from this idea. And what's happening here is in chapter 25, verses 6 through 7, God's saying, you want to see a really good trick? I'm going to make death go away. Like that. You want to see a really powerful trick? I'm going to make death no more. This is my dinner party, and I have conquered death. And that's one of the biggest things that's happening here. I mean, for this people that is watching as their world gets destroyed, God is offering hope that there's more beyond the grave. And that he accomplishes this by allowing himself to die on the cross. That he takes the place of the death that we should receive so that we can be rescued. So for this week, if we remain in sin, God's justice is going to demand punishment. That's the only way around it. If we remain in sin, if we're going to sit there and see the things that are wrong in our lives and remain in it, God's justice is going to demand punishment. But if we recognize our need to be made holy, if we recognize that there is stuff in our life that doesn't belong there, and this is more than just about, I haven't done a whole bunch of terrible stuff. All right, we say what? That it's not just about if you're good or bad, it's what? If you're holy or unholy. If you're not made holy through the blood of Jesus, then you're going to have to deal with the punishment. But if we recognize our need to be made holy, if we're willing to listen when God says you need to change, if we're made clean through the blood of Jesus, then he not only conquers death for us, but he gives us new life. That's the whole role of the Spirit and the transformation that we're supposed to undergo, that when we see these things that are in our life that don't belong there, that are part of this world, the way the world responds, that we put it to death and we start changing the way we live. And that's where we're at this week. So, all right. So, Sunday, no youth activity. There's not even any crazy church thing going on tonight. We're just going to let everybody go home, relax, spend time with family, because Wednesday is trunk or treat. All right. If you do not already have something going on with your family Wednesday night for your trunk, I need you helping out with activities. Okay. I need you guys helping out with running some of the different things that are going to be going on. Next Sunday, we've got swim party at the Chandlers. So right after evening worship, we're just going to run over there. The Wednesday after this, we've got our answered prayer party and semester review. Okay. Now, here's the question I've got for you guys, because in the past, what we've done is I brought in pizza and some ice cream and stuff like that, but we've got Wednesday night bite that Wednesday. So what kind of stuff do you want me to bring in to celebrate the answered prayers? Still pizza? Still ice cream? Okay. Okay. Well, there you go. All right. So we'll still do the regular thing. So if you haven't signed up for Encounter LE, make sure you get signed up for that. Okay. Oh yeah, and then Tuesday lunch, Portales folks, pulled pork. So, all right. Love you guys. You're awesome. Proud of you. Huh? Now get out. Get out of my van.
No, bro.
Okay.
It's a very large van.